We're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Disruption Talks episode of the new year, 2022. I hope everyone had a great holiday time over the break, got to spend lovely time with family, and has come back refreshed. I'm really excited. Today, we're going to be welcoming Lucas Bédout from Spendesk. And basically, we're going to be talking about a few things within Spendesk and the wider world of Lucas as well. So welcome to the show, Lucas.
Yeah. Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem at all. We were having a little discussion previously, and I was discussing with some of the teams internally as well. And we were talking about how amazing it was to see the kind of fast adoption of kind of spend automation tools in 2021. And I'm sure many finance teams are grateful to companies like Spendesk.
I hope.
Yeah, as an absolute blessing for sure. Cool. So following the usual format of these shows, we usually start with like a bit of a deep dive into the person speaking with us today. So maybe we can begin with yourself, Lucas. Maybe you want to give like a little introduction to the people watching.
Yeah, definitely. It's still early for me. I'm not a morning person. So even though it's 10 a.m., I know as French people, we tend to start late the day. So I may say things that, anyways. So my name is Luca. I'm actually 27, soon to be 28, which is still young, I think, in the industry standards. At least that's what people tell me. I was in school like at 17 or something, decided to, like school was enough for me, started working. And when you're 18, you're a techie guy or tech savvy and you want to start working. What do? Either you go to McDonald's and you sell burgers, or you get interested into coding. That's what I chose. It paid more at the time. So I was lucky enough to get hired in a few small jobs, and from small jobs to small jobs, I discovered the joys of engineering and SaaS companies. I've been working in several companies in France, and then moved to London as well, where I learned to speak English, or at least I hope. And then moved back to France because I was missing the food mostly. And joined Spendesk 5 years ago, which was probably the best decision of my life. Fun fact is I joined Spendesk because they were nice, and I expected to change after 6 months. But in the end, it was probably the best decision I ever made. So yeah, here I am, Spendesk. We were 2 in the engineering team. It's a bigger team. So we've done the whole job all the way, from being a small company in the very small office to being a company that's sort of a leader in Europe right now. Even though we still have a lot to do.
Nice. Yeah, because you started as like a full stack developer, right? And you've kind of had that technical background. So were you involved in like building the platform right from scratch? So the architecture, design, everything.
Yeah, that's where I joined. That's the reason I joined Spendesk back then. I was a manager in London, and I wanted to be a developer because moving from France to the UK, you have a lot of things to think about, finding a flat, everything. So I was like, I don't want to think about anything, so I just want to do coding. And yeah, that's what I did. But then you always end up doing what you like, at least I hope. So we needed to hire some people. We needed someone to manage them. We looked at each other with the first Guillaume, who was the co-founder and CTO back then, and he told me like, I don't want to manage people. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do. Please do it. So I did it.
Oh, brilliant! And it's been kind of a whirlwind of a journey there so far, I guess. You're kind of like a head of engineering / CTO almost in the role that you're doing there. So what does the usual day look like for you in that kind of role?
Yeah, a typical day would involve a lot of meetings, often too many. No coding, unfortunately. We have a big team. It's like 70 people. So I think from the moment we were like 10 or 12, I just stopped coding because you don't have time, and especially if you have a problem, you're not around to fix it. I think it's Mark Zuckerberg who said that, like, as long as you can't fix your own problem, you don't code anymore. So it's a lot of meetings. Mostly it's going to be, making sure that I'm up to date on projects. Like there are a few projects that are strategic for us that I'm following, making sure my people are well. So especially my closer team, but also what we call skip meetings. So one-on-one with, people that are reporting into people who are reporting to me, making sure that everything is fine, and a lot of cross-functional work as well, because I'm involved with of course, with the other leaders in the company, the product, sales, customer success, who was, of course, is really involved with the technical topics as the bugs directly impact the customer success team. So that's a lot of cross-functional work as well, making sure we talk to each other, making sure we know where we are and what we do on main projects, really.
For sure. So I guess
hiring, I forgot hiring. So probably the hardest thing part. I do most.
Yeah, exactly. The hardest and most time-consuming part, usually.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe I can touch on the hiring then, because you've grown this from like a team of 2, like you say, and you can almost consider it like your baby, basically. And essentially, like, as you're growing it, and you're stepping away from like the coding generally, you have to entrust the work into to the new people that you're bringing into the company. So how difficult did you find that? I've never been through the process of starting a company from the beginning and like handing over some of the work and the trust to other people to do. How did you find that process, like stepping away from it?
I mean, it's so much the hard thing when you start when you're early. I've always been early in my company, so I don't know what a big company looks like. Spendesk is my first experience at something that is scaling a lot and that is 400.
Yeah.
So I think it's different at different stages of the company, but really at the beginning, and the more we grow at Spendesk, and the more I see it was the right choice. But really at the beginning, it's all about the human beings that you hire, less than the skills. I've always been keen to find people who are problem solvers in a general sense. And something I've been thinking about recently is, if I start a company tomorrow, what I will do is that I will interview everyone with a problem that they don't know how to solve, like something that's not common to their job, just to see how they think and how they react in front of something that they haven't seen before. Because every time you scale something, every time you work with a startup, you always encounter problems that you haven't seen before. New developer challenges, new infrastructure challenges, hiring. Like, we figured out hiring. We didn't know how to hire many people, but we figured it out, right? Because we're thinking that way. And so I think it's all about that. It's who we are at the beginning and making sure that when we hire the right people, they know how to solve problems that they haven't solved before, and they are not only relying on their expertise to make sure that they can move forward, right? And then later, we need experts, right? Because you need people that are really deep onto a specific topic. Like, I don't know, you need to install a Kubernetes cluster. Of course, you need someone who's installed the Kubernetes cluster before, otherwise you're going to do it wrong. But at the beginning, you don't care if the person has installed a Kubernetes cluster or not. You just want them to be scrappy enough to be able to do it, right? The first time.
Yeah, for sure. And how much did you think, like, at the beginning, you're not focused necessarily on domain experts, but you're focused on people who are like good problem solvers? How important did you feel like it was to have people as well that you could work well with in the company, right? So you had like a connection more so than like just
it's the most important thing. It's the most important thing. And it's funny because when we grew the company and we brought in people from talent acquisition teams and HR from other bigger companies, everything they told us was, what you're doing, guys, it doesn't scale, right? Because we always had the same interviewers doing some kind of cultural interviews to make sure that the people were a good fit with the company, and we were spending a lot of time with the people and everything. And some of them actually convinced me at the beginning to drop it, like to say, okay, let's move faster, let's make the process more industrial, let's know the people less, but understand their skills more. And we rolled that back to where we were at the beginning, because I think it's the key. If you work with people that you can't work with or that you don't get along with, you don't have to be friends with everyone, but at the beginning you almost have to, if you see what I mean. Like, you need to be in a place where you have 20 people in the company, you go for lunch, and you have someone sitting in the table in the middle of the office, and then you're like, I want to sit with that person, right? Whoever that is in the company. Of course, when you're 300, you can't do that anymore. But at the beginning, it's extremely important. And if I had to do it all over again, and I probably will at some point, I would invest even more in making sure that I can spend 3 hours at an airport with the first 10 people in my company, making sure that we can, have a chat about something. We don't have to have the same interests, but at least some people will teach me things, I will teach them things, and we will, love having fun is very important as well.
For sure.
I think it's the key.
Yeah, definitely. I think I read once that like the problem companies have when they're scaling is that you're setting missions in this inside kind of circle, which you'd consider maybe like the senior leadership team or the board or whatever. And then as that's passing out, the less that information is communicated well, like the less likely you are to succeed as a company, or people are going to have different understandings of the mission. And when you're that close-knit company, I think that the communication is much stronger just naturally, right? So it's not like a a forced way of like improving communication. There's just natural discussions. Everyone's on the same page about the mission, the goals.
It's natural. Like we didn't have the first 2 years at Spendesk, we never had a problem of like I wasn't told that this was happening, or I didn't understand what we were doing or why we were doing it for, because it was just it was just automated, right? You would have lunch, someone would talk to you, and you would discuss work, and because there is trust, everyone would be transparent about things, and it's just we don't have the problem. And then we discovered it when we were like 100. We're like, oh, if you don't tell everyone something, then they don't know. Oops.
Yeah, and they have their own understanding.
Yeah, definitely. But that's still a problem we have today. We have 400 in the company. Still, everyone understands what they want to understand, but we still want them to have a common culture, common background, and common area of interest, so that at least they align on something.
Sure. Do you rate culture as like one of your highest kind of goals within the company in terms of like what you want to attract people with? I know it's kind of like a buzzword, but
yeah, it's definitely a buzzword.
Really
it's definitely a buzzword, and I think overall culture comes from the people. So you don't decide it. Like some companies, they decided they think they can write culture. Even we did sometimes. You think you can write some kind of note on Notion or whatever tool you're using and be like, that's our culture. But no, it's not. Your culture is the people you've hired and the people you will hire. Yes, it's definitely something that's very important, something that we evaluate for. We have the cultural fit interview, which was a completely random interview where I would ask you what job you would do if you were born in the 1800s, for instance. And that would basically open up discussions that are, deeper and everything, because the people are, there is trust in the conversation, because it's not about work or your skills, it's about who you are, right? So it's definitely very important, but I think it's not something you can really control. You can invest into it to keep it, but it's really investing in the people that will make sure that you keep it. It's not investing in any kind of, I don't know, you can't have culture workshops, right? That doesn't happen like this. It's the management, it's the people.
It becomes contrived and forced otherwise, right? And that's when you probably lose a bit of it, as it is.
Definitely. Cool. Your managers are really important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned previously just about kind of like sharing the mission with people you're working with. So maybe I can follow on with a question about that. Like, what is the kind of the mission for Spendesk, or like your KPIs that you specifically are working now in as the person in charge of the technical department?
Yeah. I think it's different from Spendesk. For Spendesk as a whole, that for tech, we're a startup. So for Spendesk, obviously, it's going to be growth, employee NPS, that kind of things. Engineering wise, one thing that I'm looking at is retention. Retention is really important, because we, especially as we hire at scale, so we want many new people to come in. But if you have many people coming in and everyone is leaving, then it's the net new people is not that great. So retention is the first way to hire, I'm gonna say. So making sure our people stay, making sure all of them have a clear path, making sure that the most promising ones have a clear path as well. Something I don't like is like, let's hire a lot of middle managers from the external and then be like, yeah, let's go with that, because we need seniority, leadership, whereas you may have some people in the team that are actually doing the job right now and may want to do it. So, making sure everyone has a growth perspective and they're happy in their job. So that's retention. Something that I'm looking at as well, it's more on the platform side. And I like this one. It's the number of bug-free sessions on the platform. So basically, we want 99.999% of our sessions to be bug-free or problem-free. Okay. And looking at this in this way, rather than, I don't want more than 10 bugs a month, or I don't want more than this.
Yeah.
Looking at this in this way makes it way easier to understand if your product is good or not and where you need to invest, right? Because you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, oh, I'm at 99.99. What's wrong? Oh, I have many bugs. Oh no, I have many performance issues. Oh, I have UX issues on my platform. So it's something I'm monitoring, and we have objectives based on that. So something I'm looking at as well. And the last one will probably be developers' productivity, CI time, build time, basically lead time in general. How much time do we take to take a Jira ticket or an idea, and then transform it into something real in production? That's something very important as well. And there are many things when you grow very fast that may break along the way, many tools that may not work anymore. And that's something that we invest a lot of time in, and we want to invest more in the future, just to make sure people are productive. So frustrating when your tool doesn't work, It's like for you, when your MacBook Pro doesn't work and you're connecting in the morning and it's slow and it's like, it's putting you in a bad mood, you're not going to do a great job, right? So we need to make sure that everyone is productive and happy and has the right tools. So it's probably the main three things that I'm looking at right now. Employee NPS obviously is important, but I'd rather have qualitative surveys rather than just a number, because a number is, someone can be like 9 out of 10 and then leave them on chapter. So qualitative is better. But the employee surveys in general.
So retention, book percentage, and productivity of the engineering team.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we deep dive into each of those quickly? So I think also retention is a difficult number to quantify, right? So NetGuru have also, I think I joined, we were 650 engineers. 650 team, and now we're like 920 or something like that. But retention looks higher, but it's just natural when you've got that kind of humongous growth. Like when you're growing so high, it's so difficult to kind of retain all the talent, right? And then the numbers just look grossly inaccurate, in my opinion. So how do you really track what is the harmful retention to Spendesk, and how can it reduce
that? I think overall, there is a saying in tech that when you grow, early people will leave because the company is not adapted to them anymore. I think it's part true and part false, because you can always find some way in which they have freedom, right? Everyone likes safety. Everyone likes to have a salary, to be paid well. Everyone likes to vest their shares. The material thing about being an early employee at a startup, everyone likes that. Just the early employees, they need freedom. They don't want an exec to tell them what to do. They don't want an exec to tell them that now you're going to use this spreadsheet and fill that thing. They don't want to do that. So I think part of the job of the company is, if you want to keep that person because they bring a lot of cultural values, because they bring a lot of new ideas, because they're creative, because whatever, they are driven, because everyone likes them, you want to keep them for some reason, you can find a way to do it, as long as you're willing to sacrifice sometimes your perfect matrix organization and find a way for these people to express themselves, right? Give them a new product to test, give them a new ownership of a small squad, and ask them to build a growth team or something like this, right? So I think what I'm looking at retention is, ideally would be net zero. Like I want 0 departures, but you always have some. That's the case. You can't have 0 because someone will be unhappy because exactly. So what I tend to look at would be, you want the people to leave to be the ones that were the most possible leavers. You never want someone who shouldn't leave, like someone who has a clear career path, clear track, who's great. You don't want them to leave, so you want to make sure they don't. But then you want to make sure that the people who leave are actually leavers, and people that would be leaving. And then you need to make sure that they are duplicated as well, something very important. So when, especially with fast-growing startups, we have money. So we have the money to invest in duplicates for people. When someone critical is leaving, we want to make sure that we have a succession plan as well. And that's basically what I'm going to be tracking. Like, how many people are at risk? On these people that are at risk, how many have a succession plan that's clearly established? And if we don't have one, let's have one, right? And then, make sure that we have less than probably 5 to 10% annually of departures overall. I'm not talking about mishires, because mishires are a bit different. If you want to scale hiring faster, you may have mishires. But it's always, about keeping it under 5% ideally. Sometimes it goes above.
I think that's really good advice, especially for people who are maybe in like a startup stage but are experiencing high growth, right? So if they're going from 5 to 20 employees, that is considered like huge growth, right, for a startup. So it's important to understand like where not to get lost in the figures, and more about like this kind of holistic overview of what's important.
But you also have some people that are critical to your organization, right? Just because they know everyone, so sometimes they are the main the main part of the trust, right? The glue. And if that person leaves, sometimes the glue just falls apart because they don't talk to each other anymore. They don't have so it's also what we need to make sure doesn't happen. Or if it does happen, it happens in a controlled manner over a year, 6 months, and not like, I'm leaving tomorrow. Oh,
okay. No, that's nice. And the second thing you mentioned was about like the book percentages in like sessions of people coming on your website. So that sounds to me like a really difficult like figure to go for, right? But you should always aim for the highest standard possible. So what makes your ability, or like your being Spendesk, what makes your ability like to be able to hit those kind of ambitious numbers? Like, what do you have in place in order to do that?
Well, it's always about choice. Let's say that's your main objective. You're building a product tomorrow and you want it to be 5 nines in terms of bug-free sessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can just build one form. You build one form, you fix the 2 bugs you can have on the form, and then everyone is going to use your form. It's going to work, right?
Yeah.
When you use WhatsApp, every message that you send, it works, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think you can say you have 99.99% of WhatsApp bug-free sessions, right? So it's a lot about making sure that you do a few things, but you do them right? Don't do everything at the same time, otherwise it doesn't work. And that's basically what we did at the beginning. We did everything at the same time. Let's put one developer on one feature, so we build 4 features at the same time. Yeah, fantastic. Then you have 4 buggy features. So that doesn't work. So it's all about making sure that you prioritize, making sure that you just do what's essential and do it right? And do it in a small way. You don't need a very big feature with everything that you can configure at the beginning. Yes, you have 5 customers asking for it, but that's fine, right? Because they're going to try the first one, and then you're going to see if they really need that customization level, or if they can maybe adapt their workflow a little bit, or do something in a different manner. So it's all about doing little things and doing them right. And engineering is about that in general, right? If you build a system that's too big too soon, it's going to fail. So that's probably the way we think we can achieve it. We are not there yet, but we think we can achieve it. And one of the main things we invest in is as well is monitoring. So you said it's a really ambitious goal, but it's also really ambitious to track. Like, you need to make sure that you have everything in Jira, the tickets, the support tickets, you have full story that's connected as well. Basically, everything that doesn't go as it should go, you need to be fueled into a warehouse, and then you need to compute the data. So it's also a lot of investment in tooling, in monitoring, in making sure that we have visibility on everything that we do. Because if we don't have visibility, how do we know that things are working, right?
Yeah.
If you build things and then you wait for your customers to tell you it's not working, how many times did you have a bug and you didn't report it? 90% of the time, probably. So you're missing 90% of the bugs, right?
Sure. I guess it's all attributed to building things correctly, like in the first instance. So I'm guessing you have like lots of peer reviews, everything in place to ensure like from the start it's built correctly. And
actually we have design reviews, which is because the PR, if you review the PR, the code is too late. The code is written, the design has been set, and it's very hard to change everything. So what even a very senior engineer is not going to ask someone to redo the whole PR, right, on a new design. So we do design review. So you basically you make a proposal for a design and you say, I want to design my feature like this. And then with the senior engineers, there is challenge, or your manager or other people, there is challenge at that moment, because the cost to iterate on the design, on the schema, on the Google drawings is really small compared to the cost of iterating on the PR. So we do design review, yes. And that's where we think about, maybe it's too complex, maybe it's going to be buggy. How does it scale, right?
Yeah. It's all a process, right? And I guess like a follow-up question B to this is like, how do you manage the customer demand for like new features or like different changes, right? Because consumers are demanding, we know that, right? And I guess like the larger your company gets, and the more customers that you're taking on, the more that teams want to have like small minor adjustments. And do you have to kind of like curb people's enthusiasm for like new features on the product?
Actually, it may be easier as you grow, because the voice of every customer is smaller and smaller, right? And you have many people between you and the sales team. So, at the beginning, you have the sales guy, he comes to you and he's like, hey, can we build this feature? And you're like, yeah, sure, I'm going to build it now, So it's easier at the end. What we do is we have a strategy. We have a product strategy. It's built in different steps. It's over 3 years. So we know where we are going, and we know what we need to do, and we know we need to stick to it, because if we don't stick to it and we tend to do some kind of feature factory form where we just build features that the sales team or the customer success team ask us, then we're going to diverge from this strategy, and we're going to build something that's in the middle but nowhere. So yeah, we have this strategy that we are building, and then we have a little bandwidth that is reserved for tactical work. What we call tactical work is basically, we have 200 customers that are asking for a specific, authentication provider, or a specific new field in the accounting settings, something like that. And then we're going to build that within the amount of time that's reserved for this kind of project. But we always work in a healthy tension with the sales team and the customer success team to make sure that they don't feel like they can just ask for something and it's going to be built, right? It has to be justified. We help them to justify it. So we send product managers and engineers with them to work on the case and make sure that we understand everything that's going on right there. And then if it's worth it and if it fits within the time that we dedicate to that, then we build it. Otherwise, we don't. Or we have to change the strategy in some way, right?
Sure. So just gonna say to everyone listening, we're gonna just have one more question here, and then I'm gonna open up the floor to some questions from LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Whoever wants to ask a question, I'll try and get them across to Lucas in the call. So before I read out some of the audience questions, we'll just touch finally on the productivity. So you're talking about the ability to deliver and change fast. My question is about kind of innovation within Spendesk. Are you managing that process as well? Because some see it as like slightly different to engineering. It's more kind of like an ideas tank that works with engineering, for example.
You mean innovation on the product?
Yeah, of course.
Innovation. Yeah. So we have two different teams, right? We have the product team and the engineering team, and they are even though they're working closely together and they're working in squads, they're working in different ways. So I'm gonna say it's not my responsibility to innovate, but it's my responsibility to push the product team to do so. If you see what I mean. Like I'm not owning the product roadmap, or I'm not owning any of the decisions in terms of, right, let's build a new new machine learning algorithm to unblock whatever we need to unblock, right? That's more the product team to understand. But my team is more responsible for the engineering solutions to think. So our responsibility is more to innovate in terms of engineering rather than innovating in terms of features of design or things that our customers may feel when they use the product. So it's more about making sure we offer the right solution, making sure that we offer the right advice as well. So if a product manager says, no, I don't think we can, I don't think we can detect that kind of fraud in the product, maybe our team can say, yes, we can. Actually, we have the data set. We just need to build the model. It's going to take us, 5 days. We can do it, but it's 5 days. So our role is more as an advisory to the product managers, to the product designers, to the product leadership as well, rather than a driver for innovation. And then we are, of course, the people who implement innovation. So once we decide we want to innovate into something, then we are the one that make it possible. Sometimes we fail, especially with data, machine learning algorithms. Sometimes it's harder because you may not have the right data set. You may have been overestimating your capability to build something complex, especially around like reading documents and parsing information, like finding the supplier out of a ticket is actually really hard, even though it may seem easy to us humans. So it's also our responsibility to succeed in doing it. But yeah, that's how it works at Spendesk, at least.
I have someone I can introduce you to who's very good at that kind of stuff.
Right.
Cool. All right, let's ask a couple of questions just before we move on to like the professionals prism work. So we have a question from Sophia, and she asks, you mentioned that you don't code anymore, but what was the biggest technical challenge that you've experienced during your development of the product? Like, what did you learn from solving this challenge?
Wow, there are so many in 5 years. I think the biggest technical challenge is probably when we realized that the product wasn't performing as it should have performed. Mm-hmm. And usually when you have a performance issue, you just deep dive, right? So you sit at the table, you open your computer, and you start opening your Datadog dashboards, everything, and you start looking at like what's failing. And the devs did that. So they looked at the performance issues and they were like, we don't really know. Maybe it's that service, maybe it's that database. And so we looked at it together with Guillaume, who was the CTO and founder, and we sit together at the table. I remember in our kitchen, and we are like, that's okay, we'll do it, right? And so we looked at it and we realized that the performance issues, the major performance issues, we had like 5, 6, 7 seconds page loads on main pages of the products, which is way too much. And we were looking at it and we realized that it wasn't just one thing, it was just everything was starting to subperform, right? And so we were looking at a code base of 2 or 3 million lines, looking at every SQL queries, and we had like 150 SQL queries that were underperforming. And all of them were underperforming because they were too big, because the models were too complex. And we looked at each other and we realized like, okay, that's not one performance issue that we have. It's just the whole code base that is starting to be too big, right? And the designs that we had earlier, they don't work anymore. And I think that's probably the main challenge that we had. And we managed to fix it. We dedicated a task force. So it was 9 people over a month, if I remember, like 9 people over a month that were working on fixing the performance issues because it was critical for us. With catch up every morning, catch up every afternoon, just to make sure everyone was focused and we helped and we fixed the things little by little. And I think what we learned from that is probably that we looked at it too late. We had the monitoring, we had the information, we knew how the code base was built, but we waited for the customers to complain, and we waited for them to complain a lot, like emails that would say, I'm going to leave if you don't fix it, or it's becoming unusable. And I had a call with a customer who told me, like, I just can't use your platform. That's when we realized it. I think the biggest learning is that it's just don't wait for your customers to tell you that it's not working. Like, monitor it. You have tools that are extraordinary today, like Datadog. You can do everything with it. Monitor it. We
So
could have known, right?
so you kind of like built this like proactive nature, I guess, to work ahead of like the
And
customer.
now we do it. Now we have dashboards with the median query time in each database, and we have the number of bug-free sessions, and we have the average time for the load balancer, and we have alerts everywhere. It's not hard. It's really easy to do for a SRE that knows how to use Datadog and Grafana or whatever you're using. But it's just we didn't think about doing it, right? We didn't think we needed it. But we are not immune to load problems. No one is.
Yeah, I guess like the beauty of like software development or engineering is that these things happen, mistakes happen. It's all about like how you react to them, how you like build for the future and
We're
protect.
kids. We're kids again, right? You think nothing can happen to you. Oh, they had load problems. Yeah, but their code was bad. Their code base was bad. Their developers are bad. No, you can have performance. You can have performance problems as well.
Sure. Yeah. Good lesson for anyone who's listening anyway. So we talked previously about the kind of building of your team and how to pass like your mission and your goals throughout the team. Do your teams following any like specific engineering principles or any guidelines that you're saying that, okay, like I want you to be free flowing in your work, but I want you to follow this and this, like as a bare minimum within these constraints?
We have some guidelines that we are using. So of course we have guidelines about the way we write code and everything like everyone, but we also have more high level guidelines and principles. That's basically how Spendesk works as a whole, right? We'd rather give guidelines to people and give big principles rather than tell them what to do and how to do things.
Sure.
So we have principles, things like, and this one may be hard for some people, but like readability over performance. Which may sound weird now that I've said we had performance issues, but basically I'd rather have a code that's extremely readable, easy to understand, easy to modify, than a code that is extremely hard to read and makes us win, I don't know, 2 milliseconds, right? That's a debate that we had, and we went very deep into it because we tested a lot of things about JavaScript and how arrays were working, and we had a lot of benchmarks and stuff just to understand how impactful was something that was a debate over a pull request. And that's when we decided to have this principle, because just a code that's easy to read, you can always change it. A code that's very messy, even though it's really fast at the beginning, no one can change it, and it's going to be slower and slower with time because no one can change it, right? So we have that. We have also prototype the path. Prototype the path is, instead of getting your whole design done on paper before, do a part of it, try it, right? Write some code, look at it, look at how it works together, how it communicates, how the data flows between, I don't know, one table to another, one model to another. Look at it and look how it works, because as long as you haven't written a line of code, you don't see how it works, right? So sometimes in your mind, it's like, oh, I'm going to do that crystal clear. This works. And then you write 5 lines of code and then you're like, oh, that's not going to work, right? So we have that. We have also build for times 10, which is a sense of scale. Like how
Sure.
far do you push the scaling? Like, okay, you're going to have to manage some events. Do you work with SQS from Amazon? Do you have some kind of Kafka build that you want to do? And basically we ask them to think 10 times, not 100 times, not 1,000 times, because developers tend to think 1,000 times, right? 10 times is enough. And then if we build something that's readable, that's easy to maintain, and that's going to scale 10 times what it does today, that's okay. We'll update it, right? If we need to scale more. So yes, that's the kind of things that we have as principle. We also have management principles that are more around the, optimized for the team, that kind of things that we use just to give people more freedom, because if you have guidelines, if you have principles and you respect them, then it's easier for you and you feel free, right? You don't feel like you're told what to do.
Definitely. And as you were kind of deciding different elements of the tech stack, for example, like what front end code you were going to use, what cloud infrastructure, etc., they all have so many positives and negatives, or pros and cons. What kind of drove your decision? I think I heard you say JavaScript previously. Like, what made you choose the technologies that you have chosen to build on Spendesk?
Yeah, so the stack is entirely TypeScript today, so it's JavaScript but typed. Spendesk was built like this by the very first, because Spendesk was built in two parts. So there was a first team that was working on a product that was very similar, and then they stopped, and then we took over. So part of that product was built in JavaScript back then, and we knew JavaScript and we liked it, and so we were like, let's go, let's build JavaScript. So it's just, we started with it, and then with TypeScript coming in and bringing the type safety to JavaScript, the ecosystem is incredible. There's just so many things, so many people working on JavaScript, so many incredible libraries, just like React or things like everyone knows. And by the time we were big enough so that we could maybe include more technologies into the stack, we had built so much tooling, so much expertise on TypeScript in general, that there was just no point in changing. Yes, you may have some languages that are bigger, like Go, that are faster. Sorry, like you can have Go. A lot of people are Go fans, or banks are usually built in Java or Scala. We don't do that. We have almost no one in the team that is able to maintain them. Yeah, or COBOL, but that was like 40 years ago, probably. But we could do that, but we just don't have any people that knows Java, Scala, Go, or COBOL, right? They know it on the side, like they do side project with it, but they don't have production experience with them. So basically, we will have to hire entirely new people with entirely new skill sets, make sure that they are onboarded onto the code bases, make sure that they teach everyone else how to do that. And when they leave, we need to make sure that someone else is able to do it. We all had in a company that service, I don't know, it was sending emails or building PDFs or whatever, that someone had built in Rust or Haskell or Scala or whatever, and no one knew how to maintain it. No one wanted to touch it. It worked, but it had bugs, but we didn't fix the bugs. That's exactly what we don't want to happen, right?
Yeah, sure.
So we get
goes back to, sorry, go on.
No, sorry.
I was just going to say, this goes back to you saying at the beginning that your main focus when hiring people is finding problem solvers, right? Because being an expert in a specific language is great, but also if you're truly a problem solver, a couple of months and you'll pick up a language quite easily, and the more important skill there is the ability to solve that problem.
Yeah. Another advantage of the JavaScript TypeScript stack is the number of people you can hire. Like a lot of engineers are strong with TypeScript, and those who are not, they learn quickly. We have hired a lot of people that are coming from Java, from Python, from one guy from PHP, I remember, and they just ramp up very quick because the stack is easy to understand. It's easy to find good knowledge, and the team is strong, so everyone can teach you what to do. So it makes it way easier as well. We'll see. We have some data stack in Python as well, because just it's data machine learning, so it's easier. You have the libraries.
Sure. Cool. All right. So we have another question from someone who's also experienced growth pains with fast scaling teams, and that's the CEO of NetGuru. So he's asked, in March 2020, Spendesk, similarly to NetGuru, went into full lockdown almost overnight. What kind of impact did it have on the way your tech teams work today?
That's a good question. It's fun because I'm gonna say on the tech team, no impact, because we had a lot of remote people already, because we hired remotely. We hired remotely from day one. And so it was very funny at Spendesk, because the day we decided to shut down everything, France decided to shut down everything and went back to the office, every team in the office, every leader, we had an urgent meeting with the leadership and everyone was like, we need to build a plan. And they started to create new Notion notes with new names on the plan, like Apocalypse Plan or Armageddon or whatever. Anyways, the kind of plans. And they looked at me and I told them, like, I don't need to do anything. Everyone's already working remotely. They know how to do it. They know how to use Zoom. They know how to collaborate remotely. And they were like, you don't need to change your project management. They have Jira, they have everything. And so basically they started asking everything we were doing and starting copying everything that we were doing. I never had as many questions from other leaders in the company as that week. So I'm going to say it didn't change anything from what we did, anything deep. But what it changed was definitely that we were okay to hire remotely more. So we were okay to say, that's not just 30% of the team who is remote, it can be 70% of the team. And we also realized how important it was to be in the office regularly. So now, compared to before, where we had like 20% of remote people and everyone in the office most of the time, but the remote people were coming when they wanted. Now we have like 70% of remote people, but everyone has to come at least every month, even though there is pandemic and COVID, and sometimes we have to, do differently. But everyone has to come every month because, and for team buildings, right? They don't come just to work. When they come in, we do team buildings, we do offsites, we do hackathons. We do a hackathon every year, a very big event where we bring everyone in. And that's the kind of thing that we're investing in more. But really, it didn't change that much. Just that everyone was at home, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest hit is not generally just the work of the teams that you have, but it's the relationships that they carry with each other. It's different.
And there was trust. There was trust. Like I at no point in my life I was like, they're not gonna work. I sent an email the day before the lockdown, remember, giving them like 5 or 10 tips to better work from home, where I said, get dressed in the morning, that sort of things. And that's what I focused on. Like, how can you make it easier on people rather than how can you track them? Some people were putting in time trackers and everything. And I was like, don't do that. Like, everyone is afraid, everyone is worried, everyone doesn't know what to do, and some people won't see anyone for 3 months. Don't put a time tracker on them. Like, it's the best way to make them not work, right?
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think NetGuru did something similar where they said, okay, here's some money to add to your payslip, but it's got to be spent onto some way to improve your home setup. So
yeah, that's great. We didn't do that, but we should have.
Yeah, I thought it was a really nice touch. But anything, even like these tips, like what's important. I used to get out and walk my dogs each morning, and then my son when he came along as well.
You have a dog, so you have to get out. Some people don't have a dog, so they had to find a reason to go out.
Yeah,
but
it does make a difference. It's kind of like resetting the brain before you take yourself from morning at home to working at home.
But just getting dressed makes a difference. Put in a shirt, I don't know, you just feel ready for work. It's different. And then you can put back your jogging, your sweatpants after, right?
or shirt on the top, half sweatpants on the bottom.
Yes.
I think I've done that a couple of times. Okay, cool. So we've got another question from the audience from Radek Zaleski. And he asks, with such high demand for IT services right now, what's your solution for securing the right tech talent for Spendesk? I guess we've touched a little bit on it. I would say, if I could add to that question, have you seen any changes recently, in the last kind of 3 months as we kind of entering into another wave of COVID? Have you seen any kind of difficulty or changes in that hiring process?
So the fun thing is, we were able to hire through COVID quite easily, like the first lockdown, because a lot of companies were just closing, so there were just people who needed a job, and so we were hired to hire quite fast. And then from January to May 2021, zero, but zilch, like zero hire. We made zero hire, and we had a hiring plan where we needed to hire like 30 people or something. So the market was just extremely tense. No one was moving anymore because everyone was waiting for COVID to end. Now, your company is working fine. So you just wait for it to be all over. You go in holidays and then you see. And so it was very hard for us. And that's where we deep dived into our process, because when everything goes right and you're hiring, then it's fine. Everything works fine. Yes, you have things that are not working well, but that's okay. But then when you hire 0%, that's when you start to deep dive right into your hiring process and everything. And so we started reviewing the whole thing, the whole hiring process, making sure our first touch point was of great quality, making sure we leveraged engineering managers, myself, other leaders in the company to contact people as well, because it's just way better to be contacted by someone who is in the same field of work than you are, rather than a recruiter, especially if you have 500 recruiters a day contacting you. And then having a process, and that's the most important part. That's what I've been insisting on. It's very hard to have recruiters understand that sometimes, but it's building the emotional connection with the team and with the manager. It's what's going to make the decision easy in the end for the person, right? Yes, you can optimize the package, you can optimize the time, you can optimize the number of interviews that you have, whatever. But if at the end the candidate is in front of a spreadsheet where they have your company and 5 others with pros and cons, there is always someone who's going to have more pros than you, right? You're giving that to chance. And it's like a penalty in football. It's the same thing. But if you build the emotional connection and you make them want to work with you as a human being, or with their manager, or with their team, then there is no spreadsheet, right? Because at the end, the choice is already made. Like, they have the offer, they know they want to join already. And that's a lot of work on each part of the interview process, making sure every interviewer knows how to interview without the person feeling assessed, but more with the person feeling like they're in a conversation. It's about being nice. It's about having regular touch points with them. It's about projecting them into the strategy of the company, their role in the team, and how important it is that they join. And it just makes the decision easy in the end. So I think I don't have a miracle solution for securing tech talents. Of course, you need to source the right people. You need to be efficient in recruiting. You need to answer fast and everything. But it's about building the connection emotionally, like making sure they want to join your team rather than them joining for your package or your code base or your technologies. Like, don't invest in Go just because you want more developers and you have Go developers on the market. That doesn't work, right?
Yeah, makes complete sense. So that's like the hiring. Like, we've covered that pretty comprehensively. In terms of like your actual career is like getting to this point. So you mentioned at the beginning that you're 27. I think you said 27 years old. So like you've obviously progressed very quickly. Do you think there's, apart from kind of just general drive, do you think there's anything specific that you've worked on personally to be able to get yourself in such great positions so early on in your career?
That's something I've given a lot of thought, actually. I'm really interested in understanding why people behave like they behave, and especially in management, it's like the diversity of profiles that you manage, whether it's cultural, whether it's just psychological, and how people react, how people work. It's extremely interesting to understand how you can motivate 2 people completely differently, and it works, right? And how, as a manager, you have to adapt. And so sometimes you look at yourself. You're like, why do I do right? Why do I do wrong? Why am I where I am? Like, why am I able to do what I'm able to do, whereas someone else may not be? Especially when you have a manager who's not performing. It's like, that's why are they not doing what I've been doing, for instance? It's very hard to do it on yourself. So I think what I've come to accept is just like, relationship to people is a good thing. The way you talk to them, the way they feel like you are saying the truth, like you're transparent. I think it's something very important, because as long as you're able to create a trust relationship really quickly with someone, when you're in an interview, when you're having a coffee, when you're drinking a beer, when you're just seeing someone at an event, it's going to help you bring the best talents in. And a lot of the success that you have is really linked to who you're working with, right? And who's helping you every day to succeed. So I think that was probably the thing that I was doing a little bit better, probably, than other people, like building that emotional connection, building that trust. And I think a good thing that helped is also being what we call outcome driven. So I'm a very pragmatic person. So basically, I don't do anything if I don't have a return on investment on that thing, which sometimes is annoying. But like, making sure everything that you do will have an impact, and making sure you don't do anything that doesn't have one, it helps a lot, because you're moving way faster, because everything you're obsessed about is moving forward. It's not being right. It's not having the best solution. It's just moving forward. So you define your metric, you define whatever, and then you go for it. And for instance, when you're recruiting at the beginning, and a lot of things about being an early manager as a startup is, can you hire or not? If you can hire, you're going to stay the manager. If you can hire, probably someone else is going to replace you. And making sure you have that number in mind. You're like, I want to hire 5 people this month. So what do I need to do? Okay, I need to have 10 people in my pipe at every moment of my journey. Okay. Then I need to send, 25 messages, and I need to send 25 good messages. That kind of mindset where you are trying to look for a result, and then, solving the path to get to the result.
Backwards from there.
It's probably something that I did right as well.
Sure.
That's probably how I ended up where I am, and a bit of luck.
Yeah, I think like young managers and people in the create tend to want to chase respect as like their primary goal, like respect from their peers. But I think, as you mentioned there, like delivering outcomes consistently and that kind of gains respect quicker than you can earn it through other mediums, right? So your work is almost the driver.
It's always about that. I've always been in looking at famous people. You look at like Simon Sinek, I don't know, people who do talks all the time, and sometimes you're like, that's great, I would like to be as inspiring as they are, and you're like, but actually the thing I like to do, or the thing I love to do, is not being as inspiring, is having done everything that allows me to say things that are actually right. And when you focus on the way rather than focusing on the destination, you tend to be a lot faster to get there, right? You need to know where you're going. That's very important. But yeah, focusing on the path and on what's in front of you, knowing that you're going in the right direction, is just way easier rather than saying, I'm going to be Maria Carey in 5 days, right? That doesn't work.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess on the topic of inspiring, we're coming up to the end of the session now. We ask our guests like the same question at the end of every talk, and I guess you can consider this in the category of inspiring. But if you could wave like a magic wand and you could cast a spell that allows you to provide education on a specific topic to 12-year-olds all across the world, whether it be technical or non-technical, business related, whatever, what would you want them to learn?
Wow. It's not an easy one. Probably two things. Can I get two? Can I get two spells? Yes.
Let me check. Yeah, we're going to allow this one.
I think that the first one would probably be empathy.
Okay.
I'm not a very empathetic person naturally. Like that's not the way I am. But you can act like you're empathetic. You can be rationally empathetic towards people, and that's something that's very important, because being able to put yourself in the shoes of the person in front of you, will be tremendous help all over your life, just to build what I talked about earlier, like the trust and making sure people see you as a transparent person. That's very important. I think that's one, and the world would be better with a little bit more empathy, I think. And the second one would probably be introspection, being able to look into who you are, what you do, what you want to do as well, rather than following whatever pre-planned path that your parents have for you, that your friends have for you. Like all your friends are engineers, so you're going to be an engineer, but basically what you want to, you want to cook bread or whatever. I think introspection is very important. Making sure you know who you are, where you are, how good you are at what you do. That's very important as well. Some people tend to think they are too good, and some people tend to think they are not good enough. So I think these are two skills that if you get them and you get started with your life, then you'll figure things out, right?
Yeah. I really, really relate to that second one, introspection. I think like this reflection period for me, well, ever since my son was born, kind of December last year, there's been like a change inside, like what I think of, like how I look at life, and I definitely kind of are going down this route for sure. Yeah,
things change. Like you're like, oh, maybe it's not about that. Maybe there are things that are more important than whatever was important to me before. And thinking about what's important in your life right now also makes it way easier to be like, oh, that's annoying, but that's okay. Like work's annoying at the moment, that's okay, because I have my son, I have, I don't know, my sporting events, my passion on the side, and it's very important. And I wish many more people would be able to grasp that and would be a bit more self-aware.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something we teach at Spendesk. We have the energy project. It's something that is able to make you think about your energy at the moment, where you are, where you stand, what are your goals, and it's actually really useful to open up people to, oh, that's why I feel like I feel like, oh,
yeah. I don't know if we're going down like a rabbit hole a little bit here, but I feel like the influence of social media has really driven not the nation, but the world down a really bad path when it comes to wanting to live up to other goals of other people, and kind of what you see as like this perfect ideology online. It's very different to this self-reflection of like, okay, how can I live the best version of myself?
Yeah, and that's why it comes down to what I said earlier about, having your focus on the path rather than wherever you want to get to. You need to know where you want to get to. Yes, you may want to be that Instagrammer because their life looks cool, Okay, fine, but what's the first step? What do you do tomorrow to make sure that you can be one in 6 years?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I deleted Facebook and Instagram and everything recently, and there's been a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Well, I mean, I keep Instagram.
Considering it.
I keep Instagram because I'm running a lot, and actually I find good running accounts and good running advice on Instagram, as funny as it may be. So I keep it.
No, that's good. It's worth it. Okay, perfect. So I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add at the end, apart from to if you're a business out there, go buy Spendesk's platform.
No, I mean, it's always a pleasure. It was a pleasure talking to you. Really, I like the question. Sometimes the questions are a bit boring, but these ones were interesting. No, definitely. I mean, of course, Spendesk is hiring. If everyone, not from NetGuru, of course, but if anyone else is looking at this and you're looking for a job, or everything that I said looked interesting or familiar, it's always we're hiring everywhere. There is not a single position except
and not
CEO,
just in France as well,
where we're not hiring, and we hire everywhere. And fun fact, but good fact, is like we pay France salary everywhere.
Okay.
Just
saying.
So if you're in Romania, you get French salaries. If you're in the UK, you get UK salaries, of course, because they're bigger. But everywhere it pays less than France on average, we pay French salaries.
Okay, I think for anyone listening or watching, that's a really good.
Well, because we feel like your job is not tied to where you live. If you want to live, I don't know, in India and be the king of the world, then it's fine by you. Fine by us, as long as you do the same job as the guy in France. Fine by us.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's a really, really good mantra, actually. I think I should be.
Costs a lot of money, though.
Perfect. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure having you on today, Lucas. I really appreciate the kind of free-flowing conversation. Thank you to everyone who's watching or listening on the podcast retrospectively. If you can drop a like on today's episode or ask any questions in the comments, that'd be really grateful. Okay, thank you for listening, everyone. Speak soon.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Lucas. Bye-bye.